Hey everybody, welcome to Why Buy. Today we're here to talk about my 2018 TTRS. You know, it's kind of sad. This is the last generation of the TTRS, and I think the best. It started off as an iconic car for the brand itself, as it was one of the first cars that I remember seeing that they were kind of breaking out of that position that everybody was at with very hard lines, and they went with a totally different, almost like a squat down Beetle. It was a very round car, very aerodynamic, like nothing I'd ever seen before. So I kind of said that day that I will own one. So when I think about Audi, originally, I didn't think of sports cars. I thought about the 5000S or whatever it was. My parents had one, and it was more like a family car. And they really didn't do sports cars. The whole idea around Quattro was from a vehicle that they were developing for the military. And that's where they first came out with their Quattro four-wheel drive. From there, it ended up in the car in the rally scene, beating everybody that it went up against. So it was the whole new deal with all-wheel drive, or actually Quattro. And it really changed the way that everybody approached rally racing, which was a big deal to me. But it is kind of odd because they named the car TT after a motorcycle race that was actually on the Isle of Man. I'm not really sure. I guess maybe I'll have to look into that, but it's just a little bit different for a car being named after a motorcycle race. And beyond that, it became a very iconic car for them because it took them out of that family car zone and brought them more into, well, as I saw the first one, it was a sports car. It wasn't my parents' Audi at all. So the fact that the TT was Audi's first kick at the cat when it comes to sports cars, and basically developed more of a halo car. After that, I don't know if the younger audience really knows, but the TT was the first, and then it led to the conception of the R8, which became the ultimate halo car for the brand.
Rep that Audi.
So much like when you probably saw the R8, you probably thought that's an awesome car. For me, it was the TT that really brought me into the fold of Audi. It's a brand that is subtle. It doesn't have to jump in your face, but it kind of blends into the background, so it's an everyday sports car that you can drive. I would love to have an R8, unfortunately. My wheelchair doesn't fit in it. The first car I got after my accident, you know, all I thought was generic hatchback. So I went to Volkswagen and bought a Golf, and that was a great car. Let me tell you, but it's kind of missing something. And it wasn't until one day we were in visiting an Audi dealership. We were there to see somebody that we know. And I was looking around the floor and I saw this TT sitting in the floor with the hatch open. Before this, I never even thought about a TT. But, you know, this is the ultimate hatchback sports car. Why don't I just show you exactly how much room is in the back of one of these? For somebody that needs to put equipment into the back, your golf clubs, maybe you want to put in 5 sets of golf clubs. There's so much room in there that space is not an issue. I can put my wheelchair, 2 suitcases, a whole bunch of other junk in there and not even feel like we're full. So all-wheel drive for a sports car was something that's really appealed to me, more or less because this is kind of the first car that I ever came into. Before that, I was always into larger trucks, Jeeps. I ran the Jeep Jamboree in Rocky Mountain House for a while, so I was really wanted to keep my Jeeps, but it was just so hard to get in and out of them with a wheelchair. I tried it for about a year, and it just didn't work. It's funny, when you think about a car, it's almost like dogs. People have cars that really reflect a lot about them, especially if it's a second car. Maybe you might have a first car that's just to get you from A to B to work, but your second car, and if you're a car guy, it's always number of cars you own plus 1 is the right number. Personality traits, for myself anyways, I really look at the car as an extension of myself. It's what I could be if I was a car. I would be a TT. Don't ask me why, it's personal, and for everybody I'm sure it's something different. Being my first car for a long time, I also noticed that that car brought me into the fold of a community of people that is much like Jeeps. People are fiercely brand loyal. They're also real people, not people that you see in the magazines with high-end halo cars, but you get to talk to these people and meet these people. You go out for cars and coffee, the Audi Club puts on events that we go to, Audi, Porsche, Volkswagen. It just fits everybody, and it's hard to explain. Something that you just have to get involved with and check it out. I was going to do a lot of work to my GTI to basically, I was going to convert it to all-wheel drive, and I was thinking about a 5-cylinder, and I even priced everything out. And then when I saw the TT, it was everything that I already wanted. A 2-door, sporty car, all-wheel drive, lots of room, lots of convenience. I talked to them right away. I said, I want to make an order for one. And they said, well, if you want to wait a couple weeks or a couple months, the TTRS is coming out. And that's what I did when we first, I hounded the dealership. The salesman must have hated me after a while, calling them up every day. Can we build it yet? No. Can we build it yet? No. Don't call me, I'll call you. That's kind of the relationship that we were having. And when he first called me up, he caught me off guard. He says, hey, come by the dealership when you got a chance and pick up a build sheet, and we can talk about building your car for you. Man, that was exciting at that point. There are some options, but not as much options as you would figure, because the car comes pretty well kitted out already with a high package. The big thing that I wanted was basically just the black optics package, and everything else was pretty much just the way I wanted it. And then when I got my actual car, jumped into it and went to drive it, it was more than I expected. It really was. I thought, I think the big factor is the Quattro. The Quattro, when you go to take off, I mean, my GTI would spin a wheel once in a while. But Quattro, I mean, from a dig, it was just straight on. Scary, actually. The first time that I thought I'd take it out to the middle of nowhere and I can't think of anything else that does that. That isn't built by NASA. Yeah, performance just above and beyond. It over delivered from what I was expecting. It looks like a small car, but I think I already kind of alluded to it a little bit. Once you get into the car, minus there's no sunroof, so it kind of takes away a little bit, but spatially inside the car, it feels like a lot of room. The way that they kind of do that is they built this car around a driver. This car specifically, no other monitors in the car for, the passenger to look at. The vents are all designed for the driver. The digital display, I mean, that was a shocker. That thing is beautiful the first time I saw it, and it still pales when I look at other cars that try to do the same thing. They just can't catch it the way that Audi did. Everything from, and just so many techno things that, right down to the little knob that you use for controlling the menu and everything. You can actually take your finger and write on it when you're, instead of just scrolling around and trying to find all the numbers, you could just, with your finger, write on it, and it'll put exactly what you're trying to find on there. If you want to stop on the highway, have a break and grab a coffee, well, you just have to go in the car and go to the menu and boom, you have one. It's got a great stereo system in it. I use it when I'm parked, but when I'm driving, the only thing I'm listening to is the car, and I have everything else shut off because, like I said, it's a driver's experience car is what it is. And the noise, the feeling, the acceleration, just fantastic. It wasn't the first time that I was thinking about this engine, because I saw them, of course, on YouTube. In real life, it's way better than watching a YouTube video. But my GTI, actually, I was thinking that was one of the things that I planned to do, was to have that 5-cylinder put in my GTI, and with that same DSG transmission, and then convert it to all-wheel drive. But the TT is all of that. I know I alluded to it before, but something that's just fantastic in this car, in the winter time, it is a fun car to drive, and I don't understand why people pack them away in the garage for the winter. Keep them ready to go on a nice day with some good winter tires. The Quattro just grabs the ice and claws your way through anything. But I say Quattro. Audi basically uses that as a generic term for their all-wheel drive systems. Of course, the original Quattro was a lot different machine. It was a rear bias type setup with a 60 to the rear and 40 to the front. In this car, it's a little bit different. It can go 50-50, but it's really, for the most of the time, it's a front-wheel drive car. Outtakes versus original Quattro. It's also a different feel. And I learned this the first time that I tuned it. And the transmission tune put more to the rear. So when you launch in this car, being a front wheel bias car, it pulls you. You feel a pull. as opposed to when I was able to put a little more power to the back wheels. It pushes, and you can feel the push. There's a big difference between the two, and in that way only. Really, I think they move the same way, but again, it's just that rear wheel bias as opposed to front wheel bias. Originally, I was going to take the seats out. I already had a pair of seats that, I don't know if you could see them in the background there or not, but those seats were going to go in this car. After driving with this car with those seats, I know there's a weight penalty to them, but they are so satisfying. I mean, I just couldn't take those seats out. They're just too perfect. The way they hold you, to the way that you can transfer into them. I think they really hit it out of the park with that. That would say the seats and the steering wheel. The steering wheel is another one. It's a lot like my GTI was, but that was kind of comforting about it. It fits in your hand perfectly. I just have never seen a better steering wheel, and I don't think there is one. But that Alcantara, when you first grab onto it in the steering wheel, it's just so plush. Feels like something that I'm not going to say on. It's nice. That's all I'll say. So it doesn't really take an Audi aficionado to tell that there's a lot going on this car that's not from factory. There's a lot of things I did to this car, and it's pretty fun, and it's never finished. My wife always says, "Is this the last thing you're doing?" And I always say, "Yes, dear." There's a company in the UK called Automotive Passion. They make a really nice aero kit. It's probably the next best thing to the Audi Sport that costs as much as the car. With the carbon splitter, which I broke the first time out. The upper splitters, carbon fiber, and I don't know what to call these things, but they kind of direct the air through the brakes a little bit better. I also have a component underneath the car that connects to that, so it actually forces the air onto the rotors. Little things that I did right off the bat. Now, number one, this car, I ordered the black optic package. It showed up with chrome badges. They fixed that the next year. But I took all the chrome badges and I painted them first all black. And that was okay, but then changed a little bit, and I talked to a guy in Germany, and he was buying these parts, the badges, and painting them the same body color as you wanted. And he was getting them at a price that I couldn't even buy the badge at the dealership for. So we started off with the TTRS badge on the front. We had that painted white, just the letters. So we pulled off each individual letter to paint them and then put them back on. The Audi rings, which I'm kind of struggling with if I'm going to keep them there or not. I put them on the car because they haven't been on there a long time, but they're painted the exact same body color. We can move on to the hood. Of course, it's hard to miss, and I just missed it. But the big hole that I had to cut in the hood to put a vent in. Now, the vent is, a lot of people ask me, is it really functional or is it just, what is it? The car creates a big low pressure zone when it comes up over the nose. So what this does, it's kind of pointed right at the front at the intercooler and the radiators. It creates that low pressure and pulls the hot air out. And when you stop and park, you can, on a hot day, you can actually see the mirage kicking up from it. So cutting the hole in the hood wasn't the only thing that you have to do. When I put on these canards that I also got from Automotive Passion, you got to drill holes. And they didn't really come with anything to tell you where to drill the holes, so that was a big sweating point there, trying to decide. A friend was helping me out, and I asked him to drill a hole, and he said, no, you drill the first hole. So we did that. And they're pretty nice. I like them. Even before I had the car, I knew it was coming. I thought I knew the specs, and called up one of the wheel companies, and I asked them, I said, hey, are you guys making a wheel spec'd out for the TTRS? And they said, of course we are. And I said, good, send them. So they sent me those wheels, and I had them probably 2 months before I got the car. When the car showed up, I just couldn't wait to put the wheels on. Took them down to the tire shop, had the tires mounted, and then when they put the wheels on, they didn't clear the front calipers. And I was not very happy about that. So if you're going to swap out the wheels, I'd really recommend that you go to one of the online forums and just search for TTRS wheels. You'll find a whole bunch of information. Another piece that I got, once again, from Automotive Passion were these mirror covers. Be careful if you're going to change the caps on this car. The mirrors do come out, and much like my GTI, they're almost the same, except these are way tighter. I broke one of the mirrors changing the caps the first time, and that was a $1,200 fix for a new piece of glass. So do be careful, and I recommend just letting the dealership or letting a shop do that for you, because it got pretty spendy fast. Another thing that I did multiple times actually, was this cover. Like I said, I had the black Outtakes package, and I really expected this to come in black. The newer ones do now, but this one came in the polished aluminum. I took it right away and painted it black, which was a good transition, I guess you could say, for accenting the wheels, but they really didn't feel right black, because just where it's sitting on the car, it doesn't look natural when it's black. So once again, talking to my friend in Germany, he hooked me up with a new cover and a new ring, and he painted it the same color as the car. Now, I don't know, I think that's kind of the way that I would like it from the OEM, but this is an iconic thing that Audi does with the TTs that they're very well known for. And you can see also in reflection on the R8s with that. And another thing that's kind of hard to miss is the wing. Now the wing came from Automotive Passion again as part of their Aero kit. It is the single biggest piece, I think, that changes the look of the car more than any other thing, including the wheels. But this one is pretty much a copy, or similar, I should say, to the RS Sport. Except I think the RS Sport wing is $7,000, and this one was a lot less than that. This is a really nice addition, and I'm really happy with that swan neck that it has. A good touch. You can find many carbon fiber parts that come from China and probably cost 10% of what the good ones cost, but these parts went on just like OEM, so really good company to deal with. Again, Automotive Passion. So I've had the car completely wrapped by Posh Detailing with Expel Ultimate clear, and then over top of that we've done a few liveries. Now this one is probably my favorite one to date, and it really just changes the way that it feels. So a lot of people ask me why, like, what's the purpose of putting all this Aero kit, extra carbon fiber on the car? And all these aftermarket parts, even though that they're 100% functional, it also adds to the overall optics of the whole car. Everything from the livery, to the wheels, to the Aero package. I mean, this is all really customizing the car to make it my car, what I would think as an extension of myself. There are some things that they offer for the car in Europe that we don't get in North America, but I found out you can order those pretty easy. and little things like the leather piece that goes above the cluster. I like to do as much as I can without taking it to a shop. Pretty much all of the package that I've done myself. I use my wife as my hands. She's very happy to do so as we're saving money. But again, it's not just about saving money. It's about the experience of working on your car, changing it, and making it the car that you can't walk away from without looking over your shoulder when you're walking away. So when people see all that I've done to the car, they also wonder, did I do anything to it performance-wise? So when we look underneath the hood, of course, we see a bunch more carbon fiber. And once again, that isn't just because it looks good, and it does look good, but because it's also functional. So we can start right from the air intake, which uses the same idea of the ram air that the car has, with the air flowing underneath and coming into a duct, right into a conical air filter. And then it's 4 inches all the way back, right to the elbow into the turbo. That's also 4 inch. So it lets everything flow a lot better. So as far as performance underneath the hood goes, the car itself, when you buy it new, I mean, it's not lacking power. It has 400 foot-pounds of torque and 400 horsepower, more or less, which is a very high number considering that these cars are probably the fastest way to get into the 7 seconds than any other car. And it has to do a lot with that 5-cylinder engine, which is magic. Also little goodies like the engine cover that my wife bought me for Christmas. Nice carbon fiber piece to add, but that's more for looks. But right above it you can see the breather for the oil. And it's also E85 ready. This is also a tune from Unitronic. It's an ECU and TCU, so ECU is the engine, TCU is the transmission tuning, and it's at the 2+ level. So with that goes along the other parts for it, the sensors, the injectors, the fueling, the gauges in the car. And I would say gauges in the car are really a safety device, because if you're going to start making more power, you want to make sure that things aren't going to melt on you, especially with turbos. So it's a good point to take, is to think about gauges when you're upgrading. Other little bolt-on pieces that you want to add for power, and before you want to add the tune, you want to add also underneath the front. I've got a rather large intercooler. It's probably the largest one on the market, or the most frontal area. Just the little things that you can't see. There's so many that are there that honestly I've forgotten them. If I don't have a list, I'm lost. If you look up here, you also notice that, like I said earlier, with the heat that gets removed by that vent on the top, that I've added some heat shielding to keep it from getting too hot on the vinyl on the top of the hood, which I've seen it bubble up before, so it's something else you should think about when you're modding things. So also, if you look a little closer under the hood, you'll notice this red anodized spacer that I have here in front of the intake manifold. This here is a spacer that I put in that has the output for the PSI that the engine is going through, so it's a mechanical gauge instead of just trusting the computer. It also has the injectors in it for the water meth cooling that I haven't really done yet. I've got all the parts, but that'll be another thing to add in, just to, once again, not to add more power, but to be safe and cool the engine down while you're pushing it. Approach things as, doing the supporting mods before the mod itself. So like I said, if you're adding power, make sure that you can manage that power, or where is your weakest link, and then go from there. Another little thing that I added in the car is, I wouldn't say it's necessary. It's not for any other reason, but when this car comes stock, it comes with a breather that's attached to the airbox. When you launch the car, the action is so violent that it pushes red transmission fluid out of the breather and all over the bottom of the hood. The first time I tried it, the car was smoking, and I wondered why until I opened the hood. So this little guy here is just attached to that inlet from the transmission, and transmission oil can flow into it and then flow back into the transmission. So it really just keeps everything clean, neat and tidy, and I don't have to worry about, do I have enough transmission fluid in there. This car is very similar to the RS3, so a lot of these modifications that I've done are also done on the RS3, same parts for the most, other than like this piece here made by Burger Motorsports. I don't believe it fits in the RS3, and it has to have a different position. So like I said, most little things are the same, but TTRS is way better. So let's talk about what we've done in here. Mostly it's stock. Like I said, the stock seats are fantastic and I wouldn't change them for anything. We can see the carbon fiber package that's in the car on the door handles, on the center console. Also in the car, when we talk about safety, we have a fire extinguisher on the floor in front of the passenger seat. The HVAC control, you can see that they look like little jet engines. And I added those little aluminum parts on the outside just to accentuate them a little better. Just cool little things. Everything is focused for the driver. Other little things that I have in the car, you don't need them. They're more just because I think they're just another toy to play with and I have fun with it. We have some countermeasures here for the law enforcement officers that are driving around, and they're good guys, but I like to play a little bit sometimes, and this just saves me when I forget. A little bit too much, maybe. So in the back here, there's a lot of room, but they do come with rear seats. Of course, that's the first thing I took out when the car came home. Just gives it a little more room. What you see in the back here is a K-brace that braces the back end of the car. We also have what they call a Club Sport kit, which is the carbon fiber rod with a netting so nothing flies forward or backwards. In front of that, there's a rear seat delete. It's Alcantara. It's pretty nice. The other thing that I thought was the best thing that I did to the car as far as satisfaction goes was the exhaust system. And by that I mean downpipe, mid pipes, and the sport exhaust. Believe it or not, I kept the sport exhaust because I think Audi really nailed it there. But just adding in the downpipe and the mid pipes, when you're driving the car, it's such a satisfying feeling that you don't even have to drive fast. That's probably one of the best parts. That is the soul of the car. So I think as far as maintenance goes on the car, I stick to a pretty tight schedule myself. I do more than what is asked for in the owner's manual. But I also picked up a package when I bought the car. I think it was $2,000, and it has all my servicing up to 85,000 kilometers. So it's a pretty good deal. I really don't need to pay for anything. Just have to, they'll call me and remind me at certain times, spring or fall. I mean, I drive the car on the track. I drive it kind of hard sometimes. I haven't had any issues. Obviously, I've modified things and there's been no problems with that. Never heard of one breaking down. Usually if you go on the forums and something happens, you usually hear about it pretty quick. Other than somebody blowing up their engine once because they were trying to add a lot of other things to the engine that, well, it didn't work out for them. So, I mean, keep it within your limits of your budget. Sometimes if you play, in the end, you got to pay, right? It's old cliche, but it's true. I'll tell you the truth, this is probably the first time in my adult life I've only owned one car. And it's because I haven't felt the need for anything else at the moment. It's 5 years old now, and I still love it, even maybe more than the day that I got it. So, which is kind of odd for me. Usually a car or truck or something I buy, it lasts 2 years, and then the novelty is gone and I get rid of it and get something else. This one, I feel no need to move on. So it's just, I think it's just my car, and it always will be. I wanted to do a little follow-up to my TTRS review and share what car culture really means to me. The only thing I ever wanted to do was be in the infantry. I wanted to be doing the hardest job, and it's something that gave me a lot in life and at the same time took away a lot. We weren't really given the avenue to deal with things properly. It was always, well, go out there, drink a couple beer, and try to forget about everything. I was diagnosed with PTSD in '99, and as soon as I was diagnosed, right away, I was removed out of my unit. Coping with that was pretty difficult. I was always into cycling growing up. I raced road bike, did a lot of mountain biking. Mountain bikes were pretty new at the time, but so cycling was kind of, I think it's just one of those things. It was my first taste of freedom. In later years, I started using it to deal with things mentally. It was the best place for me to meditate. Being out on the road, wouldn't even give myself, when I was going to turn around, I would just keep going as far as I could until, it started to get dark out. Then I had to turn home and force me to head back. Something that I really needed at the time. And through that, I met a couple friends, and well, before long, I knew they were taking me out and making me suffer more than I ever have in a long time. And that really got me back into racing. It was actually a pretty good weekend of racing. It was a race that we weren't supposed to go for, so I really didn't train for. Unfortunately, the ground was still pretty cold. It was early in the morning. There was a big brass ring in the middle of the road that I remember. I went into that second corner, and I looked down at that brass ring and I saw my back wheel wash out. I tried to compensate, and then I noticed I was pointed straight at the curb, so in my head it was just, okay, you're gonna jump the curb, back on the grass, right back onto the course. Well, that all disappeared quick because there was a tree that I didn't see, and I hit that tree. One of the staff were walking by in the hospital, and they were talking to my nurse, and they were talking about me being paralyzed. I kind of overheard it. I don't think they were supposed to let me know, but I still was on a high. I was like, well, that's okay. I'm going to beat this. I told family and friends, don't worry about me. I'll be back up and walking in 6 months. Just give me some time. But that was a big kick in the face because there wasn't any walking, not of my own power anyways. So after the accident, I was pretty, I mean, you have your good days and you have your bad days. I went through rehab. I was still seeing a psychologist from Veterans Affairs from the military. So we worked on things. I kind of had been seeing her for a couple years before that. So we just kind of carried on. And it wasn't long after that that we were talking. And I remember hearing something about bipolar. And I went and talked to my doctor. And I said, hey, what do you think the chances are that I'm bipolar? And it's almost like a light bulb went off in her head. And she said, "I'm sorry, Brian. I'm sorry." And I was like, "Well, so you think it's fitting?" And she says, "I think it's exactly fitting." And it explained a lot. The highs and the lows, you know. I had to really take a look back at my life before that, and took a long time trying to think about what could have been, what couldn't have been. Um, Not that I didn't have PTSD, but I had this new thing that I had to deal with called bipolar. It's one of those places where you can be super high one day, bulletproof, and nothing's going to stop you, and then you might go into like 6 months of depression afterwards. Um, but I worked with my psychologist, my psychiatrist. We started dialing in the drugs, and we got closer and closer to what seemed to be working for me. And I could see a difference. I was starting to, things weren't so radical as they were before. They weren't super high and super low. They were kind of, sometimes you'd be a little bit high and that would be okay, and sometimes you'd be a little low and that would be okay. So the medication I was kind of dialing in on. After I was diagnosed bipolar, that I started looking at things different, and I didn't have to be angry all the time. I'm not saying that, again, I'm not fixed or anything. This isn't at an end. I'm still somewhere in the very early parts of my journey with bipolar. I wish I was never bipolar, but I was happy I was diagnosed, because at least I could, you know, understand why things were so tough. I had my Jeeps when I got out of the hospital, and a lot of people worked really hard to help me out. One of the off-road shops put a big custom frame in my Jeep and put some hand controls in for me, and I was driving that right away. But I started to discover that the Jeep wasn't all it was cracked up to be. It was easy to get in and out of, but trying to get my chair in and out of when you're reaching down and trying to take things apart just didn't work at all. So that's when I kind of decided that I was going to have to get away from the Jeeps and get into a car. So giving up the Jeeping was pretty hard to give up, because I was giving up a lot of the community. Not that I was giving up a lot of those friends, but I was certainly moving on. Um, then I found in the car scene, it wasn't really that much different. Um, I had written "Give All" on one of my bikes, on my racing bike, my road bike. Took a black marker and just wrote "Give All" on the stem. I think the "Give All" thing was kind of just I had friends, people that I know that they'd been killed in Afghanistan, and that, and they didn't have the opportunity. So damn it, I'm not letting life get down on me. I'm gonna give it all. And I wrote that on my stem so I would remember when I was suffering so much that I just had to push on, that I would sometimes look down at the stem, and that would remind me to, pick it up. Don't stop, and give it everything you got. Oh, I prayed. You know how many times I prayed that I'd be driving along the road and somebody would just T-bone me and finish me off. Um, that's how much suffering you go through sometimes, is that, you know, you don't want to do it yourself because you don't like the optics of it, but you wish somebody would just do it for you. And to be honest, I took a lot of risks in my life, maybe trying to get to that same conclusion. Well, when I'd get into that deep hole, you know, time and time again, it would be my wife a lot of the time. Um, I spent years trying to push her away. Like, then I thought it would make things a lot easier to finish. But she's one of the one things that she just won't let go. And because she hasn't letting go, it's hard to push her away. So I think we're stuck together, maybe meant to be. But yeah, I would say that would be about the most powerful thing, is finding people in your life to keep you going. Like I say, find something, find cars, find skydiving, find something that gets you out. Sometimes you get involved in hobbies where you need help. Maybe you don't know how to do something right away. Maybe you need to take a class. Maybe you're interested in photography, so you might not have the best camera, but go take a class and learn a little bit about it. Is it easy? No. I think it's one of the harder things to say, grab something, because what is it? If you're really new at first, you would you already have it. But I think about all the things I went through. My wife will tell you just how many stupid hobbies I tried until I found something.
This vehicle is done very well. It's the Audi TT belonging to Brian Kale.
I hope that at least one person out there finds some value in this video. And then, that'll be worth it to me. Other than that, thank you for watching. For everybody, I'm sure it's something different. Maybe an R8. If Audi would make an R8 with big enough space for my chair, please. If not, I have to go to Porsche, and you don't want that. Today we're here to talk about my 2018. Today we're here to talk about the Audi TTRS. Hey everybody, welcome to Why Buy. To hear we're here. So if you thought this video was helpful, please like and subscribe, support us. And this sounds like I'm an idiot. Please like and subscribe, show your support, and gonna f it up again. So if you thought this video was helpful, please like and subscribe. Show your support. So just for people, when they look at my car, I put a sticker underneath that said 100% stock. Well, then ironically, I had to cut through that and change it to 100% stock-ish. So I was, not a terrible liar, but today we're here to talk about Dr. Pepper. I mean, my 2018 Ford, Okay, basically what I'm going to be doing is the black piano type plastic that's on the top of these headlights, it's really, really soft. So I put some decals on here, and then after wiping across with the decals after a while, it'll make a little bit of scratches, micro scratches, that we're going to take out. So first thing I'm going to do is just use something that I can get underneath the edge of the decal and just pull that right out. And I'll do all of them. It doesn't take that long. But try not to touch the plastic if at all possible. You can usually find like a little edge. It's pulled up. Okay, so now that we got the decals off, we can kind of see a little bit of the scratches. But what we want to do is have a clean surface. So what I'm going to start with is some panel wipe, or you could use a 50-50 alcohol water mix. And we're just going to take a microfiber. I like to color code my microfibers, so each color has a different job, so we don't get cross-contamination. And then we're going to spray it just lightly. A couple of sprays on there, on the microfiber. And then just really softly scratch, because we don't want to add more scratches to the surface. We just want to get off any glues, oils that might be on the surface so that we can polish. And you can really see, it's hard to see on the camera, but you can see the micro scratches, and you can still see where the decal was. I don't know if that'll come in at all, but yeah, so we're good there. Next, we're going to go to the polishing. Okay, so most of my product I buy in bulk, and then I just decanter into smaller bottles. So what we're going to do is we're going to have some detailer for lubrication. We'll just put that there. We got our polisher, which is a Rupes, can't remember what they're called, but it's a random orbit polisher, so it's pretty safe. I'm not going to say I'm a professional or anything, but I play around. So we're going to use a fine polishing media. You always give it a shake before you use it, and then you got to be really careful. Not so much because there's going to be no damage, but every time I shake these things and then I pop it, it usually sprays me in the face because it's got pressure built up. So cover up the top, lift it up, and I didn't get sprayed that time. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to use a yellow pad. Because it's random orbital, it's actually, it's pretty safe all around, as long as you use like a fine compound and you use like a medium pad. Basically, you take your pad, you add it to your random orbital, just a small pad. Make sure it's turned off, because you'll coat yourself in product pretty quick if it starts to spin on you. And then I'm just going to put a few dots. Like 3 P's. That might even be a little bit too much. But then what you want to do is hold and just work that into the polishing pad. Take our detailing spray, and I like to just put a quick mist on the head of that polisher, and then we will wipe this off real quick before we start. Put this up here and put those aside. Okay, so what you want to do is start with just one bead, because this isn't too much of work that we have to do. It's pretty light. And just like I said, with those decals on there, you can see where it's been wiped a few times and it's left some micro scratches. So what we're going to do is we're just going to distribute this throughout the surface of what we're working on. And I might even have too much, but that's okay. And then we're going to turn on at a low speed. So I'll put it at 1, which is pretty low. Actually, I'm going to lock my chair in place first, so I'm not fighting with that. Okay, so we'll just do one, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to let it sit and rest, so it's not, you're not pushing on it too hard with this, because we're just light micro scratches. If you're going a deeper scratch, you might want to use more aggressive polish, but if you're worried about doing it and it's a deep cut, have somebody, I'd just pay somebody, it's worth it in the end if you burn right through your paint. But random orbital polisher is pretty safe. So put it down on the surface, really light, and then we're just going to move along, try to get it into the whole surface. And just start polishing like this. Try and keep the pad as flat as possible to the surface. And I like to make sure that you let go of the power before you lift the pad off, because what you'll do is you'll sling this stuff all over you, and it's not a fun thing to have to clean off all the rest of the engine bay. Just going to put some detailing on this microfiber detail wipe, just a dust, and we're going to use this to take it all off the surface and then inspect. Now what you can do when you're inspecting it, and I've seen other people do, is they'll use a small flashlight. But we got good light right now, so I can kind of see where there's any marks, and pretty much the deckling is all pretty much off. And it's pretty polished. But what we're going to do is now we're going to give it a good inspection, and sometimes you'll get a little bit of moisture, but find if you work it into your microfiber, it takes off most of it. And we're just going to put this here. So I can still see some light scratching. And when I was taking off the deckling, I also kind of gave a little scratch. So we're going to go once again. So we're just going to go like the size of a pea or less onto your pad. And then make sure it's off, because like I said, you'll sling this all over the place and you'll wish you didn't. Now we're just going to distribute it across the surface that we're working on. Turn your polisher on. I'm going to turn it up to like 3 this time. And then we're just going to start doing the same thing. Work our pattern, try and keep the pad as flat as possible. And the slower you go, the more you're working the surface. We want to do overlapping passes. And like I said, with this, you just let it sit, and you can see if I push too hard, it'll just stop. The pad will just stop and stay there. It's easier to see with if I mark the pad, but anyways, we'll just keep going. So yeah, 3 was pretty hard, so I'm just going to go back to a 2 again. And then you want to cross hatch this, right? Okay, now we're going to check our surface again. Make sure we turn this off. Let's put that there. Take our microfiber again, find a clean spot. Prime it with a little bit of detail spray. And now, you'll find that these things pick up better when they're wet, but you might want to work it into the material a little bit so it's not leaving streaks of liquid. And then we're just going to wipe this off again. So I like to go flat and then roll up as I go. So if you are pulling something along the surface, you're not going to scratch it, but I think it's pretty safe right now. Okay, we're going to inspect the surface again. Like I said, a lot of people use a little flashlight, but because of this surface and we have good lighting in here, I can kind of see if there's anywhere left where I can see where the decal was. And if not, there's no scratches that I can see. I don't know if they call it rupes or rupes, but they're a good random orbital polisher. I think this little unit was about 150 minus the batteries, but you can buy them in a case that comes with the orbiter, a actual power outlet that you can plug into, and batteries and a charger. So I like to keep 4 batteries when I'm working on things, and then change them out before they die, and the battery will last a lot longer. And it looks pretty smooth. I think I'm just going to give one more light pass. Now once again, I'm going to put it on a slow speed, a 2. Then you're just going to let it, I just let it rest its weight on there. And the slower you go, the more you're working. Once again, make sure the pad stays flat to the surface. Overlap your passes. And then just cross-hatch it. Then let it turn off. And then when you got a lot of product, like I said, start here and then roll the product up. And that's more important with paint because it's a little softer than this plastic, I think. And another clean spot. Now the hard stuff to get out of here would be, you get a little polish underneath the edges. Some guys, when they're doing a lot, they'll actually go and they'll tape up this area so that you don't get a lot of product on there. And then tape along the edge if you want to be really neat about it. But this was a pretty easy one. So, and then once again, don't get into it like you're pushing into it. And if you got this set up right, when you push into the surface, it's not going to spin anyways. It'll just stop so you're not hurting your surface. See, that's not turning. Okay, the next thing that you want to do is you want to clean these pads off. You can buy cleaner. And what I like to do is I like just to clean them off as best I can on a microfiber. So we'll turn that up a little higher. There are some, see, I just slung it all over the place. There are some fancy tools you could buy for doing this, but it's a $300 bucket is basically what it works out to. What can I say? It's just that easy. People get intimidated by you doing it, and I understand, because if you don't know what you're doing and you go hard at it, you can burn right through the surface pretty quick. For the first time, wipe it off, take a look at the surface again. If it looks like you know, it's almost out, do another pass, check the surface, wipe the surface off, inspect it, and if it looks nice and clean, mirror finish, good reflection, then we know that's good enough what I'm looking for underneath the hood.